Hi everyone, thank you for attending this evening. I'm Andrew, one of the council officers who has helped to organise tonight's event. I'm going to be shortly passing over to our cabinet member for crime, safety and community cohesion, Cllr Khayer Chowdhury. But first, the Q&As are open. So at the top of your screen, you will see a small speech bubble with a question mark in it. If you click on there, you can submit your questions. I'm moderating them, so if there's any that don't appear publicly, it will be because there'll be an issue there, or maybe it's a very complicated question that needs an answer in writing. But everyone who submits a question will get a personal response from myself. Any issues, please put it in the question bar and I'll respond to you there. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Cllr Khayer Chowdhury.
Thank you, Andrew. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me, Andrew?
I can, yeah. There's a 30-second delay, just to let everybody know.
Fair enough, cool. I'll make a start. So thank you to some 43 of you who are attending this webinar. I suspect more people will join us in time. So the purpose for doing this webinar, we've got a couple of reasons actually. The first one is to just inform residents about what we've been doing as a council with our police partners over the last few years, especially this year, to tackle burglaries and related crimes like motor vehicle crime in Redbridge. Secondly, to give you some information on what you can do as local residents to protect your homes and your cars. And finally, to have a Q&A session where you get to ask us and our police partners some questions and we'll try our best to answer them. So I've got with me Detective Inspector Louise Giles from East Area BCU. She's from the Metropolitan Police Service, so we'll be fielding some of the questions together. So firstly, why are we doing this? It's that time of the year when the days are shorter, nights get longer, and across the whole country, it's not just a Redbridge specific problem. Burglaries increased by about 35%. So we wanted to get ahead of the curve and start a discussion with residents, so you all know what we're doing already, and you also get some tips on how to protect your homes and your vehicles. So as a local authority, over the last few years, many of you would know already, as a council, we've invested heavily in CCTV and ANPR cameras. In particular, you might remember that promise we made about investing £1.5 million in ANPR and CCTV cameras. So we've done that. We've got an extensive network of automatic number plate recognition cameras across the whole borough. Together, these cameras create an invisible ring of steel around the London Borough of Redbridge. So we are constantly monitoring who's coming in and who's going out and in which part of the borough these vehicles are going in and out of. The police can also use these ANPR cameras to conduct live operations where they're looking out for vehicles linked to crimes like burglaries or gangs or drugs and other things. And the police do use them often. I know the Violence Suppression Unit has made particular use of our ANPR cameras this year to identify vehicles linked to drugs and gangs and various other issues. So CCTV and ANPR is a big one that we've invested in. More recently, we've been partnering up with our police partners to target areas, hotspot areas with joint patrols between Redbridge enforcement and police officers. So together as a council and the police service, we've been doing high-vis patrols in various parts of the borough. One of the other things we're doing, and you'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks, we're launching a new CCTV van. I'm going to be careful to not say too much about it now until after the official launch, but do watch this space. This is a van that will significantly increase our mobile CCTV capability and support the police in what they do as well, because the police can request the use of this vehicle in areas where they feel like there's a hotspot emerging or crime increasing. So those are just some of the things we've done. One of the other things, some of you might already know, alleyways. So Redbridge Council has run for some years now an alleyway gating scheme, and this is where the council provides 75% of the cost towards resident-led projects to install gates in alleyways behind or besides their homes. This is to restrict access to vulnerable private alleyways. A lot of burglars are opportunists and they look for dark alleyways. They look for gates to climb over. Sorry, not gates, fences to climb over to break into homes. So by securing alleyways, we can keep burglars out. And I think that's about it from me. I am going to pass it on to my colleague, Detective Inspector Giles, now, who'll say a few words. You're muted.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, all good to go, Louise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for giving up your evening to come and listen to what we as the police are doing about reducing burglaries, but also taking some time to invest in your own security and what you can do to reduce burglaries as well. I'm going to give you a few statistics, but before I do, just introducing myself, I'm Louise Giles and I've been a police officer now for 20 years. All of it really in the CID, 18 years in the CID as a detective. So now I am the sort of operational lead of burglary and robbery for the 3 boroughs that have merged together as a police area known as East Area, and they are your borough, Redbridge, and we merged a couple of years ago with Barking and Dagenham and Havering. So some of the statistics I'm going to talk through are in terms of comparison to those other boroughs. However, you must bear in mind that there's other boroughs or neighbouring boroughs such as Newham that in terms of burglary volumes you would have less than. So I'm kind of giving that as a precursor to some of these statistics, which obviously as residents of Redbridge would be worrying because you are the biggest contributor in the East Area to burglaries. So the period that I'm going to talk about is what the police know as winter nights, 1st of December to 31st of January. And we call it winter nights to give that period a name so that we can attribute extra assets, resources, funding to burglary in that time frame, because it is historically our highest contributor through the year to burglary rates. So as you can hopefully see on the screen, I don't want to bog you down with too many statistics, but the number of residential burglaries has decreased year on year since 2018. So during the winter nights period, there was a 9% decrease in 2019. 2020, we obviously saw a 46% drop. However, obviously that was COVID period. Lockdown was in place, people were at home, you know, an absolutely unprecedented drop in burglary. Redbridge consistently recorded the highest number of residential burglaries between December and January in 2018, 19 and 20 compared to our partners in Barking and Dagenham and Havering. And you know, that pattern has continued. If you look at the table at the bottom there, you'll see those figures for this sort of 2-month period, 2008 2020. You've obviously got to bear in mind that's the COVID period. So that's we look at this data historically so that we can plan, basically, because often there are seasonal trends and you'll see the same patterns occurring each year, and that enables us to kind of get ahead of things, decide where we're going to put our resources if it's following those annual trends. However, that data there is obviously now a year out of date, so we want to look a little bit closer at the latest picture. Before we do that though, this is it broken down for the last 3 years into the wards that represent the highest volume. So I'll keep this slide up for a little while because I bet all the residents online are desperately having a look at the boxes to see if their wards in the highest category, which obviously nobody wants that to be the case. If we sort of analyse the progression of residential burglaries, it's clear that Redbridge repeatedly experiences higher and more concentrated levels of reported offences. So although the number of residential burglaries has dropped a lot, there has been an increase in the number of wards recording a higher concentration of burglaries. So if we have a look at the impact of COVID, though, the impact of COVID, the longer term impact of COVID isn't represented the same in the three boroughs. For example, Havering had increasingly recorded higher number of wards in the top 5 between 2017 and 19. However, there's now no Havering red zones. If you have a look for the 2021 wards, there's no Havering wards represented in that anymore, and none of their wards are, you know, we kind of look at it thematically. We put a red area where, you know, there's a high concentration. You know, there's been a lot of thought that's gone into that and why that may be, and the thinking really is that Havering has had the biggest change over COVID of its residents' patterns of activities. So Havering, you know, a large broker belt, a lot of the residents there work in the city, and now there's still there's a big change towards working from home. Some of the high value properties in Redbridge that would be targeted by the same kind of burglars as some of the affluent areas of Havering haven't had exactly the same impact that we see in Havering. So properties that years ago would have been vacant all day and only occupied by a small family, for example, unlike some of the larger, more affluent properties in Redbridge, are now occupied all day by people working from home. So we really think that that's had a massive impact there. There is some good news in terms of the hotspots, though, for this year. So this slide here, I'm going to look at, bring it a bit more up to date in terms of the figures and look at the last month. So where we are now, because all those figures really are quite skewed by COVID. So in the last month, we have, as is usual in the run up to the winter nights period, seen a 27.2% increase in residential burglaries compared to the previous 4 weeks. So it is going up, which is why, you know, it's really important that people are getting together on events like this to look at different things that we can do together, and with working with the council and all the different arms of the police. I'll talk soon about what we're doing about this, but it just highlights why this period in particular, winter nights, is so important to focus on. So there are 215 reports recorded during this reporting period compared to 169 in the previous 4 weeks. So, but residential burglary overall for the same period, like I've said, in 2020, is still down 10%. But Redbridge has seen an increase in this month from 73 burglaries to 92. Barking and Dagenham 50 to 62, Havering 46 to 61. So increases across the board, but once again, Redbridge more badly affected. There is some good news though in terms of the top 6 hotspots that we monitor, and now Redbridge don't feature as highly as they have done in previous years, and the wards making it into the top 6 at the moment are Clementswood, Loxford and Valentine's Ward. When we talk about these figures, you must bear in mind, obviously they sound very like scarily high in some cases, but when we give you those figures on amount of burglaries, we do also include attempts. So as you can see, those figures are broken down in this table at the bottom here. 150 substantive offences, 57 attempts. Now attempts can be anything from, you know, people reporting that people have come up on their Ring doorbell and have been looking through and acting suspiciously. It can really depend on people's perception. If they feel that they have been burgled, then that would normally go down, or, you know, it was an attempt at burglary, that would normally count as a burglary. But we have found that the number of attempted burglaries has increased by 160% since last month. So we're looking into why that might be, and if these are actually sort of criminal damages. We're also finding that there's an increase in offences this month due to access being made easier to neighbouring properties where building work is taking place. So again, sort of, you know, one of the, how can I put it, the you know, strange sort of side effects of COVID, people their spending habits are different, and a lot of people are getting building work done where they've saved money on going on holidays, or they're not moving, that kind of thing. There's a huge increase in the amount of people having work done to their properties, which is having an impact on burglary as well. So sometimes it can be unusual things that do have an increase, a knock-on effect on our figures. So why is there a problem at this time of year? Well, I've touched on that briefly, but it's often because properties are empty, because people are going out Christmas shopping, attending Christmas parties. We've discussed there's on the screen there a interview by The Guardian where a survey where they surveyed sort of ex-burglars, convicted burglars, who put New Year's Eve as the top holiday to go breaking and entering, because people were away and full of Christmas presents and high value goods that can be stolen. So that's obviously a time to be aware of. It's also the same as the next point on the slide there, Mad Friday. That's what it's known as in the police. The last Friday before Christmas is one of our busiest nights of the year. People go out drinking and it stretches the limits of the police resources, and this is obviously a good opportunity for burglars to go undetected. This is popular as well, and it's obviously just before Christmas presents are opened and that kind of thing. I'm going to talk more about not placing items outside the packaging of items, presents and that kind of thing, to indicate that there's new gadgets and new items that have been purchased for Christmas outside the property. That's thought to be another impact on offending. And the peak age range for victims has consistently been aged 25 to 45 every year, and a lot of couples in this age range will have young children, and therefore, you know, more signs of Christmas presents on display and wealth surrounding that event. So the predictions, really, if we look at the patterns of previous years, then it is that residential burglary will sadly be higher in December than in January, but this period is a large contributor to the overall amount of burglaries each annually. The reduction in daylight hours, we see as soon as the clocks go back, we see spikes in burglaries all across London. So without a shadow of a doubt, the decrease in light obviously enables people to skulk around more, although I will talk a little bit more about the peak times for burglary, which you might be surprised about. Burglary figures likely to increase, obviously, because of lockdown measures. This time last year, you know, people were hardly going out, and that had a huge impact on burglary. So yeah, going back to the times that are most popular for burglary, well, there's been a lot of analysis around that, and there isn't really much difference in terms of days of the week that are more popular for burglars to strike. But actually, the key time people often think of burglary as a kind of nighttime offence, but actually the peak time is between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 at night. And we believe, you know, that's people being opportunist around the school run and people rushing out to go and collect their children, or a little bit more lax in their security in terms of properly double locking their doors. And that's something I'm going to be talking a lot about when we get onto the crime prevention section of this presentation. In terms of Redbridge, 2 p.m. in the Loxford hotspot ward, which is, you know, one of the highest hotspots of the area, the daytime burglaries average 11% occurring at 2 p.m. So again, that time frame is really probably might surprise some of you. There is another peak which is between midnight and 3 in the morning, but that's the second peak. Really, the main one is those afternoon times. Again, that's why that preferred time for burglars, coupled with the clocks going back, is really what leads to this peak. So well, on a more positive note, well, if we know all this, then the question is, what are we doing about it? Well, we prepare for winter nights for quite a extended period leading up to it, because we know the data bears this out. So we work together with Safer Neighbourhoods teams, PCSOs, all the strands of the response officers. They have burglary briefings every time they come onto shift to let them know where the hotspots are, our top of burglary offenders, so that they can try and spot them and challenge them via stop and search if appropriate. If they get time between, obviously their core business is answering the 999 calls, but if they do get time between those calls, then they have tasking areas which are related to the top hotspots. In terms of proactive patrols, we look at that data and we concentrate patrols around the times that show the peaks for burglaries, and we ask other resources, Met-wide resources, to come and join us and boost our numbers in the areas that we need it. We're actually also starting, my team, a lot of that activity is from a proactive point of view from my uniform colleagues. In terms of how many burglaries we managed to solve, my team are beginning a week of action on the 29th of November to try to increase our detection rate of burglary, and we've just been granted centrally a £10,000 boost to try to assist us in doing that week. So I've just before coming on live just had a long meeting with my team to look at what we're going to be doing during that weekend of action, and it is going to be prioritising people that we have wanted, outstanding suspects that have appeared on our reports. We'll be increasing our viewing of CCTV stills that we have available, try to get those people identified, and anyone who's been circulated as wanted, try to get those in. We'll be visiting our high harm offenders. Anyone who's wanted, there'll be a massive drive to get them arrested ASAP. We also work with our integrated offender management team, who are a dedicated team that work in partnership with probation, with drug and alcohol services, with housing, and we really look at our entrenched offenders and look at what we can do to divert them, basically. For some areas, and in particular in Redbridge compared to, for example, Havering, your burglary problem would be more linked to drugs than in Havering. So in some ways that does present us with opportunities for acquisitive criminals like that. We know that if we actually look at the root cause of their offending and deal with that, that is probably the best way to actually stop them continuing to offend. So we work with lots of partners to look at wraparound services, how we can actually stop that constant in and out of custody and get them the help that they need to stop that pattern of offending. If they don't, there is a police arm to that though, that if they don't accept the help that's offered, then we make sure that our enforcement on those individuals is swift and robust, because if we know who our offenders are, there's no excuse really for not staying on top of them and making sure that they're not putting people through this terrible crime of burglary that we know has just such a massive impact on the victims of those crimes. So we've also, in response to the fact that Redbridge does have a higher problem than the other two boroughs that I'm responsible for, I've actually moved our robbery team, the entire burglary and robbery investigation team, to the Ilford police station base. We was previously based at Havering, at the Havering patrol base, and as of the 1st of November the whole team have moved over here. So this is enable us to be closer to those wards that need us most. It's additional police coming to and from work every day, extra pair of eyes and ears, and just enables us to be a bit closer to where we're most needed. So I'll pause for breath a little bit there, and then I'm hoping you're saving up some questions for the end, but I want to have a look at burglary prevention, because as much as sometimes I can almost feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about this, because I don't want there is no element of victim blaming here. It's not a case of, oh, you didn't secure your house properly, you can't complain if you get burgled. In an ideal world, we'd all be able to have our doors wide open, and it isn't anyone's fault if they're burgled. It's the burglar's fault, and in many regards it's our fault for not catching them and putting a stop to it. However, there is a lot that you can do to avoid being a target for those individuals that sadly are out there. And I've personally, through my career, taken opportunities where I've interviewed burglars and things like that to just ask them on a casual basis, really, what do you look for? Oh, lights are going out. What do you look for when you're when you are selecting a property to burgle? What would attract you to one property over another? And it really isn't rocket science, really. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to. Their worst nightmare is to be caught in the act. So they're looking for opportunities to get in and out quickly and not be spotted. So a lot of the time, we say to people, try and think like a burglar. Look at your property, look at it from the boundaries right up to all the entry points, and think how would a burglar get into this property? Am I making it as hard as I can for them to do that? And sometimes that's not about huge investment in your security systems or anything like that. It can really be the basics. So if we have a look at this house here, insecure garage door. Garage doors are a very easy way for burglars to come in, so I know you can get some sort of anchor points. If you have an internal door that runs into your house from your garage, always make sure that has got very good security on it, because that can be a popular point of entry. Paved driveway and path, if at all possible. Then gravel on your path makes it more difficult for a silent approach. The high front boundary that we've got here, any sort of high shrubs or plants or hedges is bad. Basically, try and trim them down, because if they can hide behind them, if they're having a scoping it out or leaving the property, if there's places that they can hide like that, then that's not a good idea. So keep hedges short. On the other hand, if you've got fences, if we have a look around the side of the property here, the low side and rear boundary, is a little bit low there. If you can have a high fence, any kind of shrubbery, especially sort of spiky type plants going up the fences, that's all good as well. The recessed insecure side gate, this is a problem here. If possible, if you could move your gates forward to where this arrow is that shows the wheelie bin, then it's not a good idea to have your gate recessed, because again, that's another little area that they can hide away unseen while they try and jump over the gate. The wheelie bin as well, that should be round on the other side of the gate, so not able to be climbed up, used as to climb up. So the gate here should be further forward. Oops, the gate should be further forward. You've got a shed at the back here, quite insecure. Sheds present as the biggest problem really. Will not only do in those figures that I've read out to you, they will include shed burglaries. It's not all just homes. So sometimes this makes our burglary figures look worse as well, because it looks like, you know, loads of people's homes are being broken into, but even sheds and over allotments and stuff like that would count in those figures. But in terms of being a victim, you obviously still don't want your shed to be broken into. A lot of people leave expensive tools in there, bikes, that kind of thing. There's things that you can buy, like again, ground anchors for bikes and better hinges and locks for your sheds. The main problem in the sheds are tools that you can use to actually break into the home as well. So make sure that those are kept out of the way. Some easy fixes here would be security lights. Dusk till dawn lights are a really good idea. Solar ones, so that you know you're not going to run out of battery. If you can afford a burglar alarm, then that's obviously ideal. And the front door. This is the real bugbear really, is front doors, and people basically just not locking properly their door. So that would really be my key takeaway, is that a lot of people, their security's okay, but they just don't use it properly. So pulling up the handle, taking the key out, all of those things, especially when rushing on a school run or something like that, it can really be as simple as that. Any kind of sign of old age is also not advisable. So I appreciate that some people will require aids to get into their property, but if you have older people in your family, if they can do without bars to sort of pull themselves up, you know, the kind of bars that you get on the side of a property, this can be a good indication to burglars that an older person lives there. Any kind of sign that it really is a property occupied by very elderly people is bad, as that can be used as a sign that there's vulnerable people there, and they could be a target for distraction burglars, which are you know, the typical kind of someone posing as a waterboard person, and they keep someone talking while someone goes and says, oh, I've got to check your tap or something, and one goes in and steals property from inside. They normally target, whenever I've been round, you can normally tell from the front straight away that the person that lives there is elderly. So try to disguise that if possible. You've got the bay windows here. Obviously they would display presents inside. Be careful where things are left. You'd be amazed how many burglaries we have, which are people, this is more in the summer though, that people have left a window open, people have simply reached in, they've seen a laptop on near the windowsill, they've just reached in and taken it. Same for jewelry boxes on windowsills. You know, a windowsill is quite a common place to store jewelry box and that kind of thing. We've had enormous amounts of value of jewelry taken simply from reaching inside and grabbing from a windowsill. So keep things well back. Obviously, if you can afford it, then a safe is a really good idea. Make sure that it's screwed into the wall and anchored down. And they do advise don't put it in your bedroom though, as that's the first place that that people would look. Now, the other one, the big one, is the video doorbell. I think that this, and there's the police are doing a massive piece of work at the moment with the video doorbell providers in terms of research on the impact of burglary, but there's a lot of talk in the burglary investigation community that it's not just COVID that's had a huge impact in the decline in burglary, but at the same time as we've sort of had COVID, at the same time there's been a huge increase in sales of video doorbells. So you probably know some people yourself that have got, you know, the Ring doorbell. You know, the footage is great that they supply. It's really easy for us to, we have a system called evidence.com. I mean, hopefully you'll never have to use this, but if you were burgled, then we send you a link and you upload it to us straight away, and we can have the footage very quickly. So that and people share those images on social media and stuff as well, which I'll talk about that later. It's not sometimes always advisable to do that, but it's really has, you know, it is a deterrent for burglars. They see those and they think, oh, can I go to the neighbour that hasn't got them? So I appreciate that they're an investment. We are, the police are working with a video doorbell company. It isn't Ring. I can't remember what their name is now, but in terms of an investment in a crime prevention project that we hope to roll out. There's going to be a couple of pilot sites. The lead responsible officer for burglary across the Met does happen to be the acting borough commander at the moment of our borough of Redbridge, Havering and Barking and Dagenham. So it'll be very much in his interest to try and get us made as a pilot site as well. And we're hoping that we can provide some video doorbells to people that can't afford it, maybe in the hotspot areas or repeat victims of burglary. So that's quite an exciting project that we've got coming up as well. So I don't want to obviously leave out flats. They can be just as big, just as badly hit by burglary. If we have a look at the block of flats here, the biggest problem that we have with flats is people simply letting other people in. So if you do know, if you're in a flat, if you can get to know your neighbours and try, and if you have like a meeting of the block or something like that, you've got some kind of WhatsApp group, you know, if you can have a policy of not letting people in that are unknown, that would be a huge help. Here you can see no CCTV. You know, speak to the landlords and try and convince them to have at least some kind of security around CCTV, lighting. On this one here, you can see there's no security lighting in the communal areas. Again, it makes it easier for them to access those ground floor properties. So with flats in general, you know, if you're up on the second or third floor or above, it can be a bit safer for burglary, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And sometimes, you know, a lot of properties will be hit all at once. So it's very important that you kind of band together with neighbours, even with houses as well. You know, I really can't stress the importance of looking out for each other with your neighbours, making sure if you're going away on holiday that people are looking out for your property, you know, maybe parking on your drive now and again, making sure that your rubbish is taken out, anything that could give away the fact that you might be away. So the next slide here really is to remind me to overemphasize the simplicity of locking the door properly. We analyse sometimes when we've caught people, we analyse their phones for messages, especially where we think they're working as part of a group. We've had a group active that have been sort of texting each other about the fact that they're going out burgling that night, and reading their messages has been you know, really interesting. They're talking about are we going out tonight, testing swingers, they call it. Swingers are basically a door that is just easy to open. They would literally go along and just try door handles. And this is, again, one of the reasons I think there is big differences between the burglary rates is in Havering. A lot of the properties do invest in better security. Certainly in some of the areas of Ilford, you've got really quite flimsy UPVC doors, which that, you know, we've seen in their messages them talking about, I'll bring a butter knife. You know, it's quite scary that people could actually break into your home using just a butter knife. But because of some of the insecurities, people not locking the door properly, you know, we just really encourage people to get into a habit every night when they go to bed, just locking the door every time they go out, even if it's just 10 minutes to go and collect the kids, you know, making sure that door handle's pulled up, the key's turned, and that's taken with you, because that can make an enormous difference. And with you know, people, I think they think of burglars, they think, you know, big scary men going around, you know, breaking into people's homes. In a lot of the cases, it's you know, you're talking teenagers, or you're talking people with drug problems. They're not sophisticated criminals. Again, the profile of burglars in the various areas is quite different. Again, Havering, more kind of organised criminals that would be coming in from Essex and the counties, deliberately targeting high value homes for high value cars and that kind of thing. But in some areas of Redbridge, we're having more the kind of profile that Newham have of you know, drug dependent burglars who are, you know, to a certain extent, they're you know, they're not thinking straight. They're not mastermind criminals that we're talking about here. So they will often just try their luck on different properties. So this is where really people just having some basic security on their property and their wits about them can really make a huge difference to make sure that, you know, you don't become a victim. So there is a wealth of information on the Secured by Design website, and the website contains a list of products that have been accredited to police preferred specifications. So if you are going to invest in some extra security, have a look on there. All of the items there would be the kind of things that your insurance company would want to see. When it comes to property and making sure if that is taken, that we get it back, then there's products that you can look at, like smart water, DNA marking of your property. So anything high value is worth investing in that. I think smart water, to buy it, it's about £18 I looked up the other day, and that you can mark about 30 items with that, because only 9% of stolen property is ever actually recovered by the police. Whereas if it's property marked, we do get a lot of people saying, oh, I've been burgled and I think I've seen the property on eBay. It's very, very difficult for us to prove it and act in those situations. It presents more of a problem that people think that we could just you know, contact that person and get the property back. If it's property marked, it's a lot better. We're able to do that much more. And for your insurance as well, that would be better. Take photos of it and properly document it. You can also load up the items and the details onto a website that I'll talk about at the end. These little gifts here, I mean, I think everything I've talked about here: burglar alarms, protecting your garden, and make sure you cancel deliveries if you're going away, and just making your property look more lived in. This is a website I was just talking about, mobilise.com, registering your property, and then we can check it. And the secured by design, lots of ideas on there, tips for recommended security. But like I said, you don't have to spend a fortune. It's more getting into a state of mind where you're thinking like a burglar and just making those changes. It could be trimming down a hedge. It could be, you know, double locking your door. Don't let yourself get burgled by a butter knife. Faraday bags for car keys, that's another important one if you have a sort of keyless entry car. A lot of the time we find, you know, Range Rovers, that kind of thing, just disappear into thin air. People don't even realise, and they've pinged the signal. They have a signal strengthener, they ping it from the car keys inside and are actually able to enter. So for high value vehicles like that, something as basic as like going back to the 90s, but actually a steering wheel lock is really effective, because it just adds that extra layer of security that they can't be bothered with, really. So I would definitely invest in something like that. If you are burgled, sadly, the thing to do is to don't touch anything. Have a think about where everything was, and if anything's been moved, you know, just don't touch it, leave it how it is. You could take photographs if things have been moved, or you know, you can see any marks or anything in particular. I'd be quite confident that you'd have a senior crimes officer with you within a reasonable time, so it's not like you've got to keep your place, you know, items there for, you know, days and days on end. Someone should be round to within your actual home setting take forensic samples. You could, as much as I don't want it to make it sound like we want you to investigate your own crime, if you are close with neighbours and you know they've got Ring doorbell footage and that kind of thing, have a little knock, and just then you'll be able to give us a heads up when we contact you that actually, yeah, we think there's some footage next door or the door after, something like that. And like I said, it's a lot easier now for people to ping that over to us via evidence.com link that we send, and it's just exactly the same as you would, you know, like load up a video on your mobile and we can get it straight away. We can have those images circulated to officers, you know, very, very quickly, and circulated all over the Met, see if any officers recognise them. How to report? Well, 101 online by our website, or in emergency 999. If you think that the offender has you know, you've disturbed a burglar, or obviously if there's a burglary in process, 999, but also if you think you've disturbed them and they've just left, then that is an emergency as well. Do not wait to call 101. We call that suspects on premises. Apart from when officers press their emergency button and we come to assist each other, what we call a suspects on probably gets one of the fastest responses that you can have, because you know, a lot of the young officers, they would love to actually, they'll get a lot of respect if they actually catch a burglar in the act. So everyone wants to try and do that. So try and call straight away if you think that they could still be in the area and it's just happened. If anyone has information about burglary, about people who handle stolen goods from burglary, anything like that, then Crime Stoppers, 800 555 111, or obviously, you know, you can provide information direct to your Safer Neighbourhoods team, or to council's safety lead, or indeed directly to us here at the burglary investigation team, now based at Ilford. So, well, if anyone's still there after all of that, I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into some of the work that we do, and some stuff that that we could all do really to just make it a bit harder for them. So, Andrew, you have we got
perfect
questions?
Thanks very much for that, Detective Inspector, and thank you to Councillor Chowdhury for your presentation. I think the best way to do this now, I'm going to run through the questions that have been asked on the Q&A segment. If we contain our answers to sort of as quick as we could, because there are quite a few that have come in, so thank you to everyone who has asked a question. Louise, would it be possible to put that back up? I think if we leave that up, the websites for people to jot down in their own time.
Yep, I'll try and
leave that up as we answer the questions.
Is that back up?
Yeah, it's come back up. Thank you. Right, so I'll whiz through them. First question to you, I believe, Councillor Chowdhury, is when will we be seeing the police hub in Woodford?
Thanks, Andrew. So on the enforcement hub in Woodford, we're still talking to our properties and estate management team. We're talking to Vision and we're talking to our partners in the police. We will be confirming and publishing details very soon. I don't want to say anything at this point because things might change. So as soon as the finer details are confirmed, we will be publishing the details. So just watch this space.
Thank you. There's a question here from Graham who's asked, why have police not attended burglaries in progress in Wardford Wells?
I obviously can't answer for sort of specific incidents like that. You know, or if there is a specific sort of concern that a resident's got of a particular burglary that wasn't attended when it should have been, when a 999 was call was made, during the burglaring process, and I can obviously respond to the specifics of what happened there, because like I said, a member of the public making a 999 call to say there is a burglar in my house now, a burglary is happening right now, that would be 100% top priority.
Sure.
So that really is really disappointing if that happened. Obviously, you could get the situation where on that particular night all resources, it does happen sometimes, every single resource is at another emergency call, but for something like that, people would, if they were halfway through dealing with one incident where there wasn't a suspect there, they would come away from that and go to the burglary in progress and then go back to the other case that they were dealing with. So it would be that's really disappointing if that's happened, because what members of the public really do expect is, you're in a situation like that in your own home, that is really
that's
emergency.
That's fine. I've dropped my email into the bar there, Graham. So if you send all the details to me, we can chase that up. Next question, Councillor Chowdhury, I believe, maybe answering this one, is do ANPR cameras flag up false number plates or even covered up plates which cannot be read?
So ANPR cameras flag up what's been reported to the police. So if the police, because the camera taps into the databases that the police have, and everything inside those databases are what the police put in. So if you call up, let's say to report a burglary, and as part of that, you give the registration plate of a vehicle that you saw outside and believe the burglars were in, that would be in the database. On the second part of the questions, can the cameras read covered up number plates? I don't think they can, because the plates are covered up.
Yeah. Good question here, I think. Is there a shorter form to get crime reference number online to report a crime which doesn't need police presence or investigation? This resident knows of 2 people who want to report a crime, but they don't want to fill in the long form. Is there a quick way for them to report?
Well, that's interesting, actually, because I have to admit I've never tried to use the form myself, so it's the first time anybody has sort of highlighted to me the fact that it's quite a lengthy process. I mean, if they're reporting something for intelligence purposes, then you could obviously pop into local police station or something like that, but presumably, you know, they want a quick method online. I'll have to get back to you on that. There's a system called Holon, but I'm thinking that's probably what we call it, and it's probably the same the other end of this lengthy form that we actually receive. So I'll find out if there's a way to quickly report concerns.
I've dropped my email in the chat bar then in reply, so you can forward me the details there, and Louise can look into it.
Just on that, if I can, Andrew. So it might be a lengthy form, but not reporting things like this, it doesn't help the police, because, for example, the DI would have come in to work this morning and would have seen actually in Ganshill there were 2 cars broken into. Now, when she's tasking her officers, she'd be thinking about that because she'd have gotten that report. But because it's not been reported to the police, it's not going to be on the DI's radar, because she can only task her officers, the burglary officers, based on what reports they're getting. So even if there is a long queue on 101, even if the form is long, not reporting things that happen, it doesn't help anyone at all. And if anything, it gives us the total opposite picture, because, you know, crime statistics are based on what reports are made. So the 2 cars that were broken into in Ganshill last night, which is where I live myself, when it comes to the statistics, it'll actually show Ganshill's quite safe and cars are not being broken into Ganshill. So, you know, even if it's a long form, it's not ideal. You know, if it's a long queue calling 101, we've all got to do our part and report it properly so that the police know about what's happening, where it's happening, and when it's happening.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. That, you know, that's so true. I think people sometimes feel, oh, you know, I reported my crime, nothing happened, it was a waste of my time. But just because you might not get an outcome in terms of, you know, a suspect actually being located and arrested, what you've provided in terms of intelligence is really useful, and it wouldn't be a waste of time in the slightest, because a lot of resources go into tracking trends and hotspots, and everything that you just said there is completely true. So we can't, if we don't know about where there's a problem, then we won't task additional resources into that area. So it is really important that people do take the time to do that. But I will definitely look into how we can make it more accessible to people and encourage them to do that. Nobody wants, you know, a lengthy process that makes you feel like you just want to give up and not bother.
Definitely. Perfect. Thank you. So everyone knows we'll be publishing these questions online with all of the answers. So there are some more things that we'll get from the police and will be published in due time. Louise, I don't know if you know the answer to this one off the top of your head, but do you know how many arrests have been made related to car theft and burglaries over the last year?
No, that's difficult to answer, basically, because I haven't got the statistics in terms of how many arrests.
Sure, we can check that and come back at a later time.
Because car thefts, there's obviously car thefts that are as part of a burglary, or sort of general car thefts which are sort of outside of my ordinary business. I do know that on average we probably have about 6 people arrested for burglary, but some weeks, you know, we have loads, other weeks not so many. It can depend on what activities taken place that week. And
so an average of 6 per week at the moment.
Yeah, and that information also wouldn't really, sometimes it'd be one person responsible for a number of burglaries. So yeah, I'd have to look into where that information is held.
Sure, we'll get that. Are there police patrols driving around Redbridge in the middle of the night? Louise, if you go first, I think Councillor Chowdhury would also want to come in on this one after.
Yes, well, this is what Winter Nights is part of, is providing additional resources to those peak times, people that are dedicated to patrolling those hotspots. So that can also be in conjunction with PCSOs, and we want to make sure that we're not just relying on the core team officers whose main business is to go attend 999 calls and people that have called in an emergency. If we sort of just relied on those officers to patrol those areas when they have any downtime, there's often nights where they don't have any downtime. So we have dedicated resources to make sure that we've got officers that are just there for that. And sometimes we even get officers from other areas of London to come and join us if our numbers are low to do those patrols. So for the winter nights series, this is why we sort of allocate particular, we ask for funding to do exactly that, so that we have those additional officers in the places at the times that we need them. However, I said about the night peak, but there is also that core daytime peak as well. So we have to make sure that the patrols are happening at those times as well.
Perfect. Councillor, did you want to come in on that one as well?
Yeah, it's just as much as the police are committing, we're also committing as a council. So the multi-agency tasking team of Redbridge enforcement officers are now doing a lot of late shifts. So some nights they're doing, shifts until 3 o'clock in the morning, and as well as dealing with, issues like antisocial behaviour, prostitution, etc. Part of their remit is also, driving up and down residential roads, trying to see who's hanging around, who's what they're doing, etc. And our officers do challenge a lot of people. It's easier to spot someone at 2 o'clock in the morning on a quiet residential road than it would be, let's say, on Gansel roundabout where it's busy with the nightclubs, etc. So our enforcement officers are also doing their part to make Redbridge safer, especially in the early hours of the morning.
Great, thank you. There's a question here about what plans are there for protection over the long Christmas weekend. I assume that it's the additional resources from the winter nights. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I'll move on to the next one then. What are the reasons for Redbridge consistently having a high rate of burglaries?
Well, that's a question that I regularly ask myself. There's lots of different specific things to Redbridge that I think compared to the other two areas. So the picture is slightly skewed, obviously, because we're comparing to two boroughs. We're not comparing to the other boroughs to the north and that kind of thing that would have higher rates of burglary than Redbridge. But yeah, I can see why it's obviously upsetting for Redbridge residents to think that their burglary problem is worse than in Barking and Dagenham and in Havering, but there are things that differ in those sort of demographics. So in Redbridge, you've got a lot of affluent areas compared to Barking and Dagenham. Barking and Dagenham has got the highest rate of unemployment in the country, I think. So a lot of premises have less valuable items that make them less attractive to steal for burglars. They've got people that are at home more, whereas in Redbridge you have more wealth, more attractive items that people would want to take. But in Havering, you've got that same sort of affluence, but better security on the homes. You've now got the additional situation there where lots of people are working from home, whereas they didn't used to be. And in Redbridge, you have a different demographic of burglar, to be honest. In Havering, they have more of a problem with your organised criminals coming in from the counties and targeting high value vehicles, for example. You wouldn't in Havering, it would be extremely rare in Havering to stop and search someone and find Class A drugs on them. So you're kind of Class A addicted burglar is not a profile that you really see in Havering, whereas in Redbridge you have a more similar profile to a newer burglar, for example, of people with those Class A problems. That so that you've got in any kind of borough. I used to work in Tower Hamlets. any kind of borough where you have rich and poor side by side is a bad combination really for crime. So you've kind of got the affluent areas, but you've also got some drug issues that some of the other boroughs don't have. So that's really the main explanation. But because of that, you know, that's why we're putting the resources into Redbridge compared to the others.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Louise. Quite a complex issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not just, I mean, there's a range of reasons, and I
Yeah.
know that he has touched on a few. And I think one of the other things that makes Redbridge unique is the road network, the motorway and the dual carriageway network we have running through the borough. So, like, you know, if you're on, let's say somebody burgles a house near Redbridge train station, right, in a stolen vehicle, within, you know, at a certain time in the morning, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, within 2 or 3 minutes, they'll be on the M11. And in another 5 minutes, they're outside London. So that's one of the key reasons why our ANPR network is so crucial in the fight against crime, because it tells us exactly where vehicles are entering, where vehicles are leaving, which way they're heading, and the police can also get lifetime information. So if they get a call, you know, that there's been a burglary on Redbridge roundabout just a minute ago, and they give the registration number, the police can use the ANPR network to find out which way that vehicle's gone, whether it's gone up the M11, whether it's gone down the A406 somewhere else, or the A12. So our ANPR network is a really important tool that the police have in fighting burglaries.
Perfect. On that matter, actually, do we know how many CCTV cameras there are in Redbridge in total?
I don't have the exact figure, and the exact figure is never the same because on a weekly basis it's changing, but we are looking at close to the 500 mark across the whole borough, and these include the standard CCTV cameras we have on high streets, the rapid deployment cameras, the 4G mobile cameras, and a range of other different, you know, cameras that we've recently been introducing in our parks, which include LED night vision capabilities. So there's not an exact answer to that. It's constantly changing, but the number is high in comparison to a lot of other boroughs. Our CCTV network is really extensive and modern.
Great. Do you know if we've got CCTV installed in Richmond Road and Eaton Road Junction?
Not at that junction, but I do have CCTV on Eaton Road, but not at that junction. Just in terms of like junctions, I wish we had the money and the resources to install cameras on every road where there might be some antisocial behavior, but we don't. So we have to prioritize locations based on crime reports, based on what the police say to us. So whilst, yeah, there might be a desire on the part of a lot of residents to have CCTV in their own areas, we don't have that funding to put in cameras everywhere in the borough.
Sure. Just to flag as well, that resident said that there are hooded people who gather late at night and dump rubbish under the big maple tree, which we'll look at, I think. And
yeah, just to that resident, if you could report that on the police's website so that the police know, you know, that it's happening when it's happening, and they can then target patrols in that area.
Perfect, thank you. Do we know how many reported burglaries happened while the properties are occupied by the resident? I suppose if we don't know the exact figure, do we know if it happens more while the property is occupied or unoccupied?
I don't know the exact figure. I think sometimes that would depend. Where we gain our statistics sometimes is only as good as the officers' input in the data. So I'm not even sure whether there's a flag for occupied or unoccupied. There must be a way of looking at that, but in general it is unoccupied properties. It is still very rare. I mean, I look at burglaries every single day, and obviously, you know, as a resident myself, somewhere, you know, when I see a report where the homeowners were in, you know, it does send a shiver down my spine, even though I'm looking at burglary every single day. So I do notice those ones and would prioritise them. And to be honest, that isn't a regular occurrence. It is more likely that the people are out and there's signs that they're out, and that's why the people are burgled. So
Right.
yeah.
I think there's a good one here. Is it legal to put glass or spikes on top of high walls?
I think you can put what you like, really. If it's on your property, you can protect it in whatever way that you want. I mean, you don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to electrify.
I was
within
just about to say,
reason.
before we give that remit, I think we should clarify that a bit.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly when I looked at the handbook for crime prevention advice, then they did actually they focus really on thorny bushes. You can get let's go for standard security that you can obtain from police approved sources. So there is some fences that have like little bits of glass in or whatever, but yeah, maybe I need to row back on that one. I don't want people shooting out electric fields or something from their properties.
Yeah, I would just also caution there are definitely legal cases where people have got in trouble for that. So I agree with Louise. It's look at the police website there, which is is it secured by design?
Yeah.
Check
really
what's approved.
Yeah.
Check what's approved and go there. Resident says burglaries might happen between 3 till 9 p.m, but lots of car theft and car content thefts happen in the middle of the night. Has there been any action on this?
Again, that sort of that does fall under the umbrella of winter nights and the sort of wider picture with antisocial behaviour. It is I have to admit that is outside of my sort of daily business. Car thefts and theft from motor vehicle, we call it. Although I have to say, sometimes it is the same kind of offender. So we will see that they start off like that and then they get more desperate and will go up to burglaries. So, I mean, on that note, we do when someone's arrested for an acquisitive crime like that, we are able to drug test them in custody. And if they test positive for Class A, then they have to come back and have an appointment with a drug intervention worker. If someone's been arrested a couple of times and they've tested positive for Class A, I would get notified, even if they're not arrested for burglary, if they're arrested for car thefts or something like that, I would get notified that, this could be somebody who's up and coming in terms of trying to feed a drug habit and could then turn to burglary and that kind of acquisitive crime. That's where I'd get my integrated offender management team to look at that person and see what we can try and offer in terms of diversion and help to get them back on the straight and narrow off drugs, and ultimately then not shoplifting. It's all part of the same sort of family of trying to basically fund a drug habit. So that can be shoplifting, might start as theft from vehicles and then leading right up to potentially robbery or burglary. So there are ranges of methods that we use to try and spot those people and get some early intervention in.
Yeah. Louise, do you know how often you have to apply smart water to items? Does it wear off?
I don't know. You would have to look at the I'm sure that would say that on the DNA Smart Water website. I don't think you would have to, because otherwise it wouldn't be as effective as it is, and it is very effective. So I think if you apply it properly, then it can last a long time, and if it rubs against other items, it doesn't just come off. So again, we do a lot of work with pawnbrokers and places like that to make sure that they are checking with the UV lights every item of property that comes through their door.
We've got someone here who says they get a lot of attempted thefts from cars which are caught on their Ring doorbell. Can this footage be forwarded to anybody?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That again, you would need to make the police report so that you could be in contact with someone to get sent that link and then upload it, and then we would have you know, their face, because again, that's someone that probably starts like that and then works their way up. So yes.
And I'm just gonna have to stress this again. It might be, you know, a small break-in. They might just nick a couple of pounds of loose change and things like that. But it is so important to call 101 and report it, because it will give the police an idea of when it's happening, where it's happening. And then, you know, Detective Inspector Giles can target her officers or task her officers to, you know, patrol those areas where those break-ins are happening. It might be small, but please, you've got to report it. As part of the reporting process, you'll be given, you know, if you tell the operator you've got evidence, they'll tell you how to submit the evidence to the police, but it's got to be reported to the police first.
And also, you don't know who it is. You might think, like the councillor said, that, oh well, is it worth it? You know, they've just, you know, not stolen anything or a couple of pound, but that person actually could be out on license. You know, they could be an offender that we're trying to watch quite closely. Like I said, you know, with our sort of top nominals, we really we want to catch them for absolutely everything, so that if they're not accepting the help that we're offering, then if they were out on license, for example, even a small crime like that, we could use to actually revoke their license and put them back in prison. So it might be a really minor crime, but if the person is well known, then even something as small like that could be enough to get them put back in prison. So you don't know who you're dealing with sometimes.
Fantastic. I've just read that it's 3 to 5 year lifespan for the smart water.
Right, brilliant.
So thanks for that, Mark. I think given the time, I'm going to ask the last question. If there are any questions that I've missed, apologies. I will be publishing all of the questions and some researched answers on the council website. So please keep an eye. And if you've emailed me, I will get back to you all. The email is keepsafe@redbridge.gov.uk. The last question that I've seen here, which got a quick answer, is does the Woodford Safer Neighbourhood team still exist?
It does. I know it exists because I emailed them a few weeks ago and they responded. If you go on Google and search Redbridge SNT, the second page, the second link will be the council's website. On that website is a list of all the Safer Neighbourhood teams in Redbridge. And if you click your ward, an email box will pop up and you can email them directly. So please do email your SNT if you've got any issues or concerns you'd like to discuss with them. Yeah.
And that's on the Redbridge Council website?
Yeah, so if you go onto Google and search Redbridge SNT, that's Safer Neighbourhood Team. The council website will pop up and there'll be a list of every single SNT or neighbourhood policing team in the whole of Redbridge, and you can email them directly. So, you know, let's say in Woodford, you've seen online lots of Ring doorbell footage of cars being broken into, etc., etc. Drop your SNT a line, you know, tell them that you're worried about that, ask them what they can do, and they'll work with you to ensure, you know, patrols are being targeted in the area. They're doing a lot more to tackle the issue, that sort of stuff. This is essentially why safer neighborhood teams exist. It's to deal with the really neighborhood low-level stuff that actually scare people.
Perfect. I'm going to call it there, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending and listening to the presentation and our webinar. Thank you to Cllr Khayer Chowdhury, and thank you to Detective Inspector Giles for coming. Have a good evening, everybody, and I will be publishing all of the questions on the Redbridge Council website over the next few days. I'm going to drop the email address that you can contact me on now. If you have any more questions, please do get in touch.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Detective Inspector Giles, for joining us this evening. Thank you to all the residents who've tuned in, and yeah, have a good night. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. And yeah, please do drop Andrew a line if you found it useful and you enjoyed this evening, and if there's any further questions that you wanted to ask. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Well, have a good evening. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Bye.